Hey everybody, and welcome back to Space Nerd Confessions. I'm Cynthia, and today we're going to be talking about the Space Force a little bit more. More specifically, I'm going to talk about the timeline of the Space Force, what career fields are involved, and what the military branch transfers will look like for that. Additionally, today I'll be covering different intelligence career fields that the Air Force has to offer, and I scored some awesome interviews with some intelligence analysts, and we'll kind of cover the different day-to-day operations and job responsibilities and pros and cons of each career field. Also, as a disclaimer, my videos in no way, shape, or form represent the Air Force or Space Force. I'm merely here for an open discussion on my thoughts and experiences thus far. So I don't know about you, but I'm ready to talk about Space Force. So in my last video, I briefly mentioned what the buildup of the Space Force is going to look like and what the primary AFSCs that will be transferring from the Air Force to the Space Force will be. And so today I'm going to clarify exactly what that means. So I'll break it down by the timeline and then discuss what career fields were involved in those accessions. So the Space Force buildup initiated with an Air Force Academy graduation in April of 2020, where a group of graduates ranging from 14N to 13 Sierra, 62 Echoes, and 63 Alphas were transferred straight into the Space Force. And for the next phase, I'm really excited about is that the 13 Sierras, this chick, and 1 Charlie 6s, so the space operators on the officer and enlisted side, will start their transfers 1 September to go into the Space Force. Also, just a side note, for 13 Sierras and 1 Charlie 6s, it wasn't a mandatory transfer. I mentioned in my last video that there was an application deadline of May 31st, and that was whether you can choose to transfer into the Space Force or if you decline and want to stay in the Air Force. All right, next on the timeline, listen up, this is important. For any newly recruited 1 Charlie 6s on or after 1 October will go straight into the Space Force. And this also applies to OTS and ROTC space officers for 13 Sierras. You will automatically go into the Space Force on or after 1 October. Now for those that are not space operators, on 1 February, we will start the transfer for those who applied and got accepted to transfer from the Air Force to the Space Force. This included 11 different AFSCs outside of the space operation career fields, to include 14 Ns, 1 and O, 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 1 and 4, 1 and 8, 62 Echo, 63 Alpha, 17 X-ray, 3DO, and 3D1. So for those that utilize this application window, you'll be notified in August, and like I said, the transfer will start 1 February of 2021. So just recently, the Senior Enlisted Advisor of the Space Force put out a little teaser notifying us that there was 8,500 applicants to transfer from the Air Force to the Space Force, and that does include the space operators, the 13 Sierras and 1 Charlie 6s, and that there will only be 6,000 members selected. For our members that are in other military services, the time frame for the Army and the Navy space career field transfer will be in the area of fiscal year 2022 and 2023. However, for fiscal year 2021, the Space Force will drop more information in regards to what this sister branch transfer will look like and what career fields will be involved. And for our second topic of discussion today, I will be talking about the different intelligence career fields that the Air Force has to offer. And I'm really excited about this collaboration with a few different intelligence analysts where they're able to bring in their viewpoint and experiences of what the day-to-day looks like and what the pros and cons of their specific job. So for the first intelligence career field we'll talk about today is the 1&0X1, otherwise known as the Operations Intelligence Analyst. And this is the career field that I was in for the first 8 years of my career before I commissioned into a 13 Sierra. All right, to start things off, I have TSgt Fox and Staff Sergeant Pandissimo, and I asked them a few different questions varying from what the day-to-day operations look like as a 1&0 and what the pros and cons are for the career field.
So I think a day-to-day life of a 1-0 changes a lot based on where you're located and what mission you support. I've supported a couple different missions in a couple different locations, and each one of them has been a completely different experience. Right now, I do acquisition intel, and a lot of that is more research heavy, versus before I would do operational intel in Las Vegas, and that was a little bit more on the live reaction to information you're getting, kind of nonstop.
It varies because 1-0s can be placed at such different types of units doing different types of missions. So for example, you could be at an F-16 fighter unit supporting the flyers. In that case, what you're doing is helping out with mission planning, as well as briefing the aircrew on potential threats that they might face, as well as briefing them on potential countermeasures that they can use to defeat that particular threat. And a lot of that is all focused on the actual flyers and supporting the aircrew to help them get their mission done. On the other hand, you could also end up at a DGS site where you're supporting ISR operations, whether that be supporting full motion video coming from a Reaper, or a high altitude ISR mission supporting the U2 or Global Hawk. And so it can vary, but one common thing though is that as a 1-0 or as an all source analyst, you're trying to keep aware of what's going on worldwide as well as in your particular AO. So typically at the various units I've been in, the first part of the day when you come in is you're going to log in and you're going to check your various different systems that have different forms of classified reporting. So just like your average person might check the news when they wake up in the morning to see what's going on, a 1-0 is going to take a look at those different forms of classified reporting and see what's going on worldwide, as well as what's going on in the particular area of operations, to have that situational awareness. And if something meets certain criteria, you're going to let your leadership know, as well as keep your commander informed, because ultimately that's what your job is to inform decision makers, so that way they can make the right decision based off the correct information that you provide them.
I would prepare a briefing for the generals of EUCOM at that time, which is Europe, and that briefing would then get briefed to a 1-star who would add her comments to it, change it how she wanted. I would walk into a room, I would brief the individuals, and then they would tell me anything they wanted added or if she had any questions. And then later, an hour later, we go into the room full of, pretty much the whole general staff for EUCOM, which is 1 stars to 3 stars, and all the civilians. And then I would be part of the briefing process. So I would stand there and I would wait my turn and brief my 30-second blurb. But for me, pros and cons, pros have been the people I've met. They've been amazing. A lot of interesting, different walks of life. Another is being part of some really interesting mission sets that I would never be working with this stuff, in a normal day-to-day job. And 3 is seeing the impact of what I've done, that morning on the news that night.
I enjoy it in particular because I like seeing immediate job satisfaction. So in particular, supporting ISR operations in the Middle East, in Iraq and Afghanistan, the work that I do in supporting the guys downrange, they go out, roll up bad guys, it's immediate job satisfaction. So that's one of the few things that you actually get to see. You actually get to see the impact of your hard work and the effort that you put into it. So when I was at the contingency response group in Germany, I actually fell under the security forces squadron. And so I did a lot of force protection intel, which kind of sounds boring at first, but I got to get anti-terrorism training, force protection training. And with that, we got to do a lot of airfield surveys in Europe. And so I got to do the force protection part of the survey. So we'd basically fly out and assess an airfield, and my job would be to look at the security around the airfield. So like the type of perimeter, the types of gates, the type of how many security guards they have, what types of training they have. A huge advantage that one-and-ohs have over one-and-ones. One-and-ones are pretty limited on where they can go, whereas one-and-ohs, we can pretty much go anywhere. And there are actually a lot of really cool special assignments that you can go to. In particular, over in Europe, I've seen openings like there's even a 1-and-0 billet at Cape Canaveral supporting space shuttle launches, which you really don't see with a whole lot of other career fields.
So I think 1-0. Well, first of all, I think a lot of 1-0s are like, I got it made the moment I get out. I'm set to, get a good contracting gig that's going to pay a lot of money. And I think for some that's a reality, but I think it also requires you to have a certain amount of experience, because I've seen people who are, I think it sets you up pretty well. Like, I think you'll have, just having the clearance gets you in the door in a lot of places you wouldn't have, a way in. And let's say you didn't finish your degree, you'd probably be getting paid more than someone without a degree in the same kind of capacity as you are. But what I do see also is that it depends on your capabilities as a 1-0, and it depends on your experience as well.
All right, and next we have Tech Sergeant Reynolds, who is a 1-1, and we'll see what he has to say about his career field.
Each day is going to be different. It's kind of one of my favorite things about this job. So when you start and you get to work for the day, you're going to start off with changeover. So changeover is basically a 30-minute period where you're getting the latest updates from the crew that worked before you. They're going to tell you any pertinent information that you're going to need to know to be successful at whatever operation that you guys are continuing for them. Any products that we're going to need created. So in 1-1, our products are essentially what you would look at as pictures. So we would call them images. But we want to make sure that those products are to the specifications of our customer. Our customers are normally going to be people that are on the ground, combatant commanders, anybody that has a request for information that's been submitted to us. So my job was an imagery mission supervisor. I would take the changeover from the imagery mission supervisor on the outgoing crew, and then just make sure that anything that needed to be taken care of was taken care of to the specifications of that customer. Once I got done with changeover and the other crew left, I would take 20 to 30 minutes just to do research. Again, one of my favorite things about the career is that no one really tells you exactly how to do your job. I always found it helpful to do research. We have plenty of resources out there, 20, 30 minutes of quick reading on just what's going on in the AOR that I'm going to be working in that day. And then just some other stuff that I'd be interested in globally. The end of your day is going to be kind of just the same way how it started. Where we're going to go over changeover again, and then I'm on the other end of it this time. So I'm letting the incoming IMS or imagery mission supervisor know exactly what he's going to need to be successful for his day. I absolutely loved it. I loved every second of being an imagery analyst. I came from a small town in Indiana, so I was more focused on corn and soybeans and small time things like that. When I got into the Air Force and I find out, kind of what my mission is as an intelligence analyst and imagery mission supervisor, specifically being in charge of the mission, it's a lot of pressure. So you have a lot of high value things that you're going to be looking at and going over, reports that you're going to be sending out to the intelligence community. It could be looked at by anybody from another analyst anywhere in the world, all the way up to the president, depending on what you ended up seeing. So a lot of job satisfaction. So like a good day as an imagery mission supervisor, right? We could have saved the lives of a whole convoy by spotting an IED. Just there's a lot of things that you get that instant gratification of, you did a good job, and you could have actually saved a life. So I feel like there's few and far between jobs where being able to say you actually saved a life is something that you can say. It's not going to be on a day-to-day basis, but when it does happen, it's very rewarding. And once you've had that happen before, it's like a constant drive to be good at your job and stay on top of what's going on, so that you don't miss something, and then the other side of that happens and someone ends up getting hurt because you missed something. So I love the challenge of it, and just the kind of rewarding aspect of what the job can bring. Okay, so job opportunities as a 1-in-1 or a geospatial intelligence analyst outside of the military are actually a very, very broad. With the increase in technology, drone usage and things like that, the need for people who are certified to exploit the feed off of drones, or even work in deployed locations. So a lot of people, maybe as civilians, don't know, but there are civilians that supplement the military in deployed locations. And actually, those contracts are posted by different contracting companies. So basically the big government's going to come down and say, hey, we need all these different jobs. The different contracting companies are going to bid on those, and then they'll open up applications for people such as myself if I were to get out of the military now, and I'd have the opportunity to fill that. So salary is going to kind of be dependent on where you're working and then what you're doing. So I've seen people that got picked up after 4 years of active duty, right, to go do Apple Maps. So a big part of our job, right, is map making and things like that. So they worked with Apple Maps, flew in the back of an airplane and made, I think it was $220,000 a year. You can get a job working in Florida as a geospatial intelligence analyst, and you're going to make around $60,000 a year starting out. It really does depend on where you're at, the location, and then what you are doing at the time. All right, so one major question a lot of you guys are going to have is, where can you be stationed as a 1-in-1 alpha or geospatial intelligence analyst? 80% of us in the career field are actually at one of 5 locations. So they're called Distributed Common Ground System, or DCGSs. I was actually stationed at DGS-2 for my whole career as an imagery analyst, so 8 years. You have Langley, Virginia, Beale in California, Korea, so it's Osan, Korea, Ramstein, Germany, and then Hawaii. So those are the 5 locations. They're all really nice, actually. So you're pretty much guaranteed to be in a good spot.
And lastly, we have Staff Sergeant Hubbard. So let's see what he has to say about his career field.
So day to day for a 1-in-4 Bravo, it's highly dependent on your duty station, because unlike say an F-15 or an F-16 crew chief, where you work on that platform in a different location, a 1-in-4, your job changes even if you go down the hall to a different office. For me, during my time frame, I worked in tactical SIGINT for the first 5.5 years of my career, and then I worked in strategic SIG Dev the last part of my career. So my day-to-day life changed quite a bit. Initially, I was producing live intelligence reports to go to guys downrange so that they could either do force protection for troops in combat, build target packages to go kill bad guys, or general intelligence gathering purposes. Sometimes on shift, you were really bored. Other times you worked a 14-hour day. So it varied quite a lot. Now, when I went to the SIG Dev side of the house, so SIGINT development, it's a much more strategic, that's a slower paced mission, because you're answering bigger questions that require weeks, months, even sometimes years worth of work. My favorite as far as like mission satisfaction was definitely the tactical SIGINT, because every day we went in, I knew that the work that I did directly impacted the warfighter in Afghanistan or Iraq. Mm-hmm. So there was a surreal connection. Like, we were in communication with guys in Bagram, Baghdad, Kandahar, whatever base. So we knew what was going on from them directly. The only downside of that is it's a very stressful environment. You're constantly like on edge. It's like you're constantly watching, monitoring to see if something happens. And then there's always the flip side whenever, hey, an IED went off and it killed 3 U.S. soldiers. It was very surreal and very close to you. So it was fun for the action. It was the stress added like a layer of like, oh, this is rough. SIG Dev was a lot of fun because what I learned about technology and different computer systems and techniques really like fit with my kind of nerdy, let me learn everything mentality. The pros are just the fact of you get access to so much information that most people would never be able to get access to or even really rationalize. The con is that you get so much access to information that you can't talk about, so you can't like relate your job to someone else. Another big pro of it is there's a lot of opportunity once you leave the military. Like as a 1 in 4, you can transition into a, say, an NSA civilian job, a DIA job, or work for a handful of contracting companies that have contracts with these 3-letter intelligence agencies, or even like a department of the Air Force, Navy, Army. In those intelligence positions, you have a really good career opportunity set up once you get out, whether you do your, a 6-year enlistment or you do 30 years. Another con is that you're sometimes limited to your duty stations. Like as a 1 in 4 Bravo, I had about maybe 15 places I could feasibly go, 4 that I could definitely go at any time. Those were your NSA sites. And then there was usually a handful others that would pop up occasionally that I could go to. But you were kind of limited to your duty station, and you tend to be at a duty station for a lot longer. Like I was at Fort Gordon, my first and only duty station, for 7 years. And I transitioned squadrons from like once and halfway through. So that can be a con if you want to go travel the world. You could get really lucky and pull Germany, which a lot of our friends did. They got Germany and they went to Germany for 3.5, 4 years and they had a great time. Mm-hmm. And then guys are like, oh man, I'm going to Offutt, Nebraska. If you don't like corn, you may not like Offutt that much. But so that's kind of the, with anything, there's a pro and a con.
So that concludes my interview portion with the Air Force Analysts. There are 3 other intelligence career fields, a 1 in 4, 1 in 7, and a 1 in 8, which is in the most recent AFSC that they have come out with. But I'll drop a link below for those 3 career fields so you can get spun up on what those have to offer.
Interested in, acting on maybe a job, say you thought this was interesting and something that, you'd want to pursue, go to airforce.com. If you type in at the bottom of that, you're going to be able to click Find a Recruiter. You're going to type in your zip code, and then it's going to tell you the recruiter that's assigned to that zip code. So it's as simple as that. Put that in there. You'll fill out a brief application, and then that recruiter will reach out and contact you. So super easy. And hopefully when I go back to the career field after my stint here in recruiting, I could see some of you guys out there.
So that concludes for this week's Space Nerd Confessions. Please comment with any questions that you may have that I can address in future videos. Also, please subscribe and like for my future videos. And for next week's discussion, I'll be talking about the different commissioning sources that are available, to include the Air Force Academy, OTS, and ROTC programs. Hopefully I can land some different interviews also, so I can get different experiences to help everybody with different backgrounds. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye!